Hello, everybody, and happy Friday. Personally, I'm sitting here kind of reflecting, looking at the date, and I can't believe that it's already been 2 weeks. I mean, at first, when we started, when I decided I was going to start recording these Harry Potter videos for you, I was thinking, oh my goodness, there's going to be so much time to fill in the day. Like, what am I going to do all day? And I realized as things started to kind of pick up this week and we kind of jumped back into digital learning and kind of found a process for writing and for the Harry Potter books and making plans for math, I found that time's actually going by a lot faster than I anticipated. And I don't have as much free time as I thought that I would in my days. So I'm kind of curious if you guys are experiencing the same thing. I look forward to, well, some of you I already talked with yesterday, but those of you I'm talking with today, I'm kind of curious about how you're feeling about that as well. Alrighty, so I left you at a cliffhanger yesterday, and I've got to say, one of my favorite things is just imagining whenever I leave it at the cliffhanger. I love when we're reading all in the same group in school, and we're all sitting on the rug, and when I leave it at a cliffhanger, and everyone's like, what? No! 5 more minutes! We can just do 5! And it makes my heart really happy to think about that. Not because I like to torture you and leave you with a cliffhanger, just because it's a really sweet feeling and one of my favorite memories of us all being together on the rug and spending time together. So I'm holding that very close to my heart as this time and hoping that this feels just as special to you to get to read this together as it does to me. It's been one of my favorite things that kind of makes me feel centered and in a normal routine while we're all at home and not getting to see each other. So anyways, back to the story. So Ron and Harry exchanged nervous glances. "It's probably just tired," said Ron. "It's never been this far before." And they both pretended not to notice the whining growing louder and louder as the sky became steadily darker. Stars were blossoming into the blackness, and Harry pulled his jumper back on, trying to ignore the way that the windscreen wipers were now waving feebly, as though in protest. "Not far," said Ron, more to the car than to Harry. "Not far now," and he patted the dashboard nervously. When they flew back beneath the clouds, a little while later, they had to squint through the darkness for a landmark that they knew. "There!" Harry shouted, making Ron and Hedwig jump. "Straight ahead!" Silhouetted on the dark horizon, high on the cliff over the lake, stood the many turrets and towers of Hogwarts Castle. But the car had begun to shudder and was losing speed. "Come on," Ron said, cajolingly, giving the steering wheel a little shake. "Nearly there, come on." The engine groaned. Narrow jets of steam were issuing from under the bonnet. Harry found himself gripping the edges of his seat very hard as they flew towards the lake. The car gave a nasty wobble. Glancing out his window, Harry saw the smooth, black, glassy surface of the water, a mile below. Ron's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, and the car wobbled again. "Come on," Ron muttered. They were over the lake. The castle was right ahead. Ron put his foot down. There was a loud clunk, a splutter, and the engine died completely. "Uh-oh," said Ron into the silence. The nose of the car dropped. They were falling and gathering speed, heading straight for the solid castle wall. "No!" Ron yelled, swinging the steering wheel around. They missed the dark stone wall by inches as the car turned in a great arc, soaring over the dark green houses. Then the vegetable patch, and then out over the black lawns, losing height all the time. Ron let go of the steering wheel completely and pulled his wand out of his back pocket. "Stop! Stop!" he yelled, whacking the dashboard and the windscreen, but they were still plummeting. The ground was flying up towards them. "Mind that tree!" Harry bellowed, lunging for the steering wheel, but too late. Crunch! With an ear-splitting bang of metal on wood, they hit the thick tree trunk and dropped to the ground with a heavy jolt. Steam was billowing from under the crumpled bonnet. Hedwig was shrieking in terror. A golf ball-sized lump was throbbing on Harry's head where he had hit the windshield, and to his right, Ron let out a low, despairing groan. Ugh. "Are you okay?" Harry said urgently. "My wand," said Ron in a shaky voice. "Look at my wand." It had snapped almost in two, and the tip of it was dangling limply, held on by just a few splinters. Harry opened his mouth to say that he was sure they would be able to mend it back up at school, but he never even got started. At that very moment, something hit the side of the car with the force of a charging bull, sending him lurching sideways into Ron, just as equally a heavy blow on the roof. "What's happened?" Ron gasped, staring through the windscreen, and Harry looked around just in time to see a branch as thick as a python smash into it. The tree they had hit was attacking them. Its trunk was bent almost doubled over, and its gnarled boughs were pummeling every inch of the car that it could reach. "Ah!" said Ron, as another twisted limb punched a large dent into his door. The windscreen was now trembling under a hail of blows from knuckle-like twigs, and a branch as thick as a battering ram was pounding furiously on the roof, which seemed to be caving in. "Run for it!" Ron shouted, throwing his full weight against his door. But next second, he had been knocked backwards into Harry's lap by a vicious uppercut from another branch. "We're done for," he moaned as the ceiling sagged in, but suddenly the floor of the car was vibrating. The engine had restarted. "Reverse!" Harry yelled, and the car shot backwards. The tree was still trying to hit them. They could hear its roots creaking as it almost ripped itself up from the ground, lashing out at them as they sped out of reach. "That," panted Ron, "was close. Well done, car." The car, however, had reached the end of its tether. With two smart clunks, the doors flew open, and Harry felt his seat tip sideways. Next thing he knew, he was sprawled on the damp ground. Loud thuds told him that the car was ejecting their luggage from the boot. Hedwig's cage flew through the air and burst open. She rose out of it with a loud, angry screech and sped off towards the castle without a backwards look. Then, dented, scratched, and steaming, the car rumbled off into the darkness, its rear lights blazing angrily. "Come back!" Ron yelled after it, brandishing his broken wand. "Dad will kill me!" But the car disappeared from view with one last snort from its exhaust. "Can you believe our luck?" said Ron miserably, bending down to pick up Scabbers the rat. "Of all the trees we could have hit, we had to get the one that hits back." He glanced over his shoulder at the ancient tree, which was still flailing its branches threateningly. "Come on," said Harry warily. "We'd better get up to the school." It wasn't all the triumphant arrival that they had pictured. Stiff, cold, and bruised, they seized the ends of their trunks and began dragging them up the grassy slope, towards the great oak front doors. "I think the feast has already started," said Ron, dropping his trunk at the foot of the front steps and crossing quietly to look through a brightly lit window. "Hey, Harry, come and look! It's the sorting!" Harry hurried over, and together he and Ron peered into the great hall. Innumerable candles were hovering mid-air over 4 long crowded tables, making the golden plates and goblets sparkle. Overhead, the bewitched ceiling which was always mirrored by the sky outside, sparkled with stars. Through the forest of the pointed black Hogwarts hats, Harry saw a line full of scared-looking first-years filing into the hall. Ginny was amongst them, easily visible because of her vivid Weasley hair. Meanwhile, Professor McGonagall, a bespectacled witch with her hair in a tight bun, was placing the famous Hogwarts sorting hat on a stool before the newcomers. Every year, this aged-old hat, patched and frayed and dirty, sorted the new students into the 4 Hogwarts houses: Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin. Harry well remembered putting it on, exactly 1 year ago, and waiting, petrified, for its decision as it muttered aloud in his ears. For a few horrible seconds he had feared that the hat was going to put him in Slytherin, the house which had turned out more dark witches and wizards than any other. He had ended up in Gryffindor, along with Ron, Hermione, and the rest of the Weasleys. Last term, Harry and Ron had helped Gryffindor win the house championship, beating Slytherin for the first time in 7 years. A very small, mousy-haired boy had been called to place the hat on his head. Harry's eyes wandered past him to where Professor Dumbledore, the headmaster, sat watching the sorting hat from the staff table, with his long silver beard and half-moon glasses shining brightly in the candlelight. Several seats along, Harry saw Gilderoy Lockhart, dressed in robes of aquamarine. And there at the end was Hagrid, huge and hairy, and drinking deeply from his goblet. "Hang on," Harry muttered to Ron. "There's an empty chair at the staff table. Where's Snape?" Professor Severus Snape was Harry's least favorite teacher. Harry also happened to be Snape's least favorite student. Cruel, sarcastic, and disliked by everybody, except for the students in his own house, Slytherin, Snape taught potions. "Maybe he's ill," said Ron, hopefully. "Maybe he's left," said Harry, "because he missed out on the Defense Against the Dark Art job again." "Or he might have been sacked," said Ron, enthusiastically. That means fired. "I mean, everyone hates him." "Or maybe," said a very cold voice right behind them, "he's waiting to hear why you didn't arrive on the school train." Harry spun around. There, his black robes rippling in a cold breeze, stood Severus Snape. He was a thin man with sallow skin, a hooked nose, and greasy, shoulder-length black hair. And at this moment, he was smiling in a way that told Ron and Harry they were in very deep trouble. "Follow me," said Snape. Not daring to even look at each other, Harry and Ron followed Snape up the steps into the vast, echoing entrance hall, which was lit with flaming torches. A delicious smell of food was wafting from the great hall, but Snape led them away from the warmth and light down a narrow stone staircase that led into the dungeons. "In," he said, opening a door halfway down the cold passageway and pointing. They entered Snape's office, shivering. The shadowy walls were lined with shelves of large glass jars, in which floated all the manner of revolting things that Harry didn't really want to know the name of at the moment. The fireplace was dark and empty. Snape closed the door and turned to look at them. "So," he said softly, "the train isn't good enough for the famous Harry Potter and his faithful sidekick Weasley. Wanted to arrive with a bang, did we, boys?" "No, sir. It was the barrier at King's Cross. "Silence," said Snape coldly. "What have you done with the car?" Ron gulped. This wasn't the first time that Snape had given Harry the impression of being able to read minds. But a moment later, he understood, as Snape unrolled today's issue of the Evening Prophet. "You were seen," he hissed, showing them the headline. "Flying Ford Anglia mystifies Muggles." He began to read aloud. "2 Muggles in London convinced they saw an old flying car over the post office tower at noon in Norfolk. Mrs. Hetty Bayliss While hanging out her washing, Mr. Angus Fleet of Peebles reported to the police. 6 or 7 muggles in all. I believe your father works in the misuse of Muggle artifacts office, he said, looking up at Ron, smiling still more nastily. Dear, 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 his own son. Sorry, I messed up. That was supposed to be Snape saying all of that. Harry felt as though he'd just been walloped in the stomach by one of the mad tree's larger branches. If anyone found out that Mr. Weasley had bewitched the car, he hadn't thought of that. I noticed, in my search of the park, that considerable damage seems to have been done to a very valuable Whomping Willow, Snape went on. That tree did more damage to us than we, Ron blurted out. Silence, snapped Snape again. Most unfortunately, you are not in my house, and the decision to expel you does not rest with me. I shall go and fetch the people who do have that happy power. You will have to wait here. And you will have to wait until Monday to find out what happens. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. I hope that you get some good rest and some good phone calls in with family and friends. Do some art. Hopefully there's some sunshine so you can get some vitamin D on your face and your neck and your hands and spend some good time with your family. All right? I will talk to you next week. Toodaloo.